Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Global Fleet Conference 2020 and welcome in this webinar session, this deep dive webinar session that we organize together with Geotab. The Global Fleet Conference is of course made possible via all sponsors of our conference, but for this deep dive webinar, we have selected the topic of Restart, Reimagined with electric focus, and of course, no better partner to organize this webinar with than Geotab, the company that you probably already know and should be in your business partner list. Today, we have three experts that are going to detail how you need to reimagine the restart of your business with a focus on EV electrification. And those experts are in first instance, Ivan Lequerica. He is VP at Geotab for South and West Europe. Ivan, hello, how are you doing?
I'm doing fine. Thanks, Steven, for the introduction, and thanks, Global Fleet, for giving us the chance to present a topic that we are passionate about. One of the most relevant in the mobility and fleet management industry these days, that is electrification. Welcome, everybody. We got registrations from many different continents, Europe, Latin, North America, so a real global session. As Steven said, my name is Ivan Lequerica, and I'm the VP of Geotab for South and West Europe, and I will be moderating this webinar. As a very short introduction of Geotab, it was founded in 2000 in Canada. Geotab is a global leader in telematics that processes over 40 billion data points per day from more than 2 million connected vehicles across the globe. This session will have three different presentations of about 10-15 minutes each, and we will end up with a Q&A slot at the end. Air pollution is the biggest environmental risk to the human health. According to the European Environmental Agency, up to 96% of the European citizens live in urban areas classified as hazardous to health in 2015. So the risk of air pollution for our society is clear and well demonstrated by the scientific community. The transportation sector in particular, as an important source of greenhouse gas emissions, is one area where cutting carbon can make an impact. So in the US, for example, the transportation sector produces up to 29% of total greenhouse gas emissions, while in the US, that figure is around 27%. And some authorities are doing something about it. So the European Green Deal is a program outlined in the political guidelines of the European Commission, and it aims to make Europe the first climate neutral continent by 2050. This program fosters incentives for clean vehicles, more low emission zones, and other policies that will accelerate the adoption of sustainability local action plans. Our first speaker, Harald, will talk about greenhouse gases, the effect of air pollution, and a project that aims to measure air quality levels in our cities. An effective strategy for reducing emissions is to switch from internal combustion engine vehicles to EVs. We all know this. But in order to better understand the appetite towards EV, we did a wide survey in some countries, and we found out that most of the fleet managers are willing to go electric. So, for example, 89% of the fleet managers in the UK, they want to move to electric vehicles. In Spain, the percentage was a bit lower, it was 67%. They have the appetite, but they don't know how to do it effectively, no? And they have some concerns on battery range, cost of the vehicles, and charging infrastructure mainly. In our second slot, we will have Fabian, our colleague Fabian, presenting why is the right timing to go electric and how Geotab can support the transition with high quality data. While the benefits of telematics in gas and diesel vehicles are well known in the industry, for EV, connected vehicles and data from them becomes almost mandatory in order to operate the fleet. So in the third section, Fabian will present as well a case study from one of our customers, HelloFresh, explaining how telematics has become essential to manage electric fleets. So after this short introduction, let me introduce our first speaker, Harald Horn. Harald is a solution engineer and operations manager for Nordics Central Europe in Geotab. With a degree in biomedical engineering, he has 20 years of experience in the telecommunications industry, and he's an expert in air quality projects. So Harald, stage is yours.
Thank you very much, Ivan, for the very nice introduction, and welcome everybody on the phone. I'm happy to be allowed to talk about this topic, air quality as such, today. And I will run you through in a 10-15 minutes time frame, as Ivan has said, through a topic which is so global and so wide that we could easily talk hours and hours about that, and it's definitely not going to get boring. So what can you expect in the next 10-15 minutes, me running through some of the slides? We will talk about air pollution and greenhouse gases, as Ivan said, and maybe it's good to just understand a bit what is the difference, because we're not always talking about the same thing, although we might mean the same thing. From that topic, we go into the topic of air quality, because that is, again, on a different level. And afterwards, I would like to introduce you quickly to the so-called air quality project that we at Geotab have established some time ago. And we are kind of exploring situations and possibly innovations that would help us to kind of understand better the quality of the air around us, not by reading a kind of analytical and scientific research result, which is based on 2015 or 2017, but we would actually like to get some real-time results and visualization out there. And we believe that telematics, telecommunication, and the current technology that we are working in, the IoT space, actually would allow us to get there closer and closer. So what is air? And I guess it's sometimes very simple to see and sometimes very difficult to really understand and capture the dimensions. So let me introduce by saying we don't need to eat, because sometimes we want to lose some weight, so we can do this for a few days. We don't even need to drink, but a few days no drink, that is not good. So this is already limited to water. And now when it comes to the last essential, when we are breathing, depending on your condition, it will also only be a few minutes, and afterwards, that's gone. If you look into the amount of air that you're breathing on a daily basis, whatever air constitutes of course, that's 11,000 liters, which is, if you look into a swimming pool in your garden, possibly you have a certain understanding how much that is. That's quite a nice swimming pool size, so maybe 3.5 meters in the diameter. So at the end of the day, it's essential that we understand without air, forget it. We don't need to talk about transports, logistics, and everything. How does the air around us actually look or feel? And these are some pictures, and depending on your age, my age is old enough, I do know the left-hand picture. Industry has been a heavy contributor to air pollution with whatever it is, smoke, maybe fires, doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, something is going to be emitted into the air. On the right-hand side, you see our transport partner on the water. Also, ships do have quite an emission situation today, although the number of electrical driven ships actually start to be seen. And on the lower picture, you see a typical street scene. And if you have visited Africa or maybe New Delhi or any other big city in the world, this is how it looks like. So a traffic jam like we have on the route between Eindhoven and Amsterdam or somewhere else in Europe, that's small scale. And then, of course, we have the natural disasters. And this picture, you might realize what this is. This is the bushfires in Australia beginning of this year, where we actually had smoke and clouds traveling over the Pacific towards the Latin American continent, where we could recognize that the air was impacted a few days later. And if that is not enough to give you an understanding how resourceful we are here, quick relation. I love this picture. So you see the Earth twice. On the left-hand side, you see the Earth and the small blue bubble. Actually, the blue bubble is showing the amount of water. If you take all the water you find on the Earth compared to the size of the Earth. And that's actually not so surprising. But what I thought really was surprising was the right side, because I didn't really do the math myself. But on the right side, you see the small bubble. That is the amount of breathable air that is surrounding our planet compared to the size of our planet. I actually thought this bubble must have been much, much, much bigger, but it's not. So actually, this is a scarce resource and we should respect it, and we need to understand what we can do to improve it. Because greenhouse gases is something that we grew up with in the last 20, 40 years. And greenhouse gases are those gases like water. It's a greenhouse gas, like carbon dioxide, CO2, or methane, CO4. These are greenhouse gases that we find sometimes naturally and sometimes anthropogenic in our environment. Don't mistake it, because without greenhouse gases, we can't live on the Earth either. So according to the scientists, it's only about -18 degrees on the Earth. If we don't have these greenhouse gases, that's not good enough. And also, we talk about CO2 as the biggest poisoner of our air. Yes, it is, but also without CO2, we can't live on the air. So a certain amount of CO2 needs to be there. You will see that CO2, nevertheless, is the biggest driver of climate change. So we need to understand, where does CO2 come from? How can we possibly avoid it? Because we cannot avoid the natural CO2 emission, but we can hopefully somehow control the physical CO2 emissions. So that's greenhouse gases. What is air pollution? Now, air pollution is per definition slightly different, but you will see that air pollution is made out of gases, and we do have methane in there. But we don't have the nitrous oxide. We do have the nitrogen oxide, which is a small difference, because the chemical formula, which I do not go into, is slightly different. It's not N2, it's only N. And that is a big difference. But that is a typical air pollution gas. Where they come from, we come on the next slide. But apart from the gases, a very important part, this is where our transport industry will see some challenges, because particulates also are counting to the air pollution. And think about where particulates come from when you think about your daily life, and you will find the answer later on in the discussion. Maybe will electric vehicles improve the air pollution problem as such? And then, of course, we have some biological molecules. It's getting more and more relevant that air pollution is not only a phenomenon that we are going to face outdoors, because that's what we call the urban air quality, but we'll also see it indoors. And now with COVID, we are maybe a bit even more sensitive against air quality indoor and outdoor. So what are the sources? And the sources of air pollution, CO2, very clear: combustion, unfortunately also deforestation and soil erosion, and to some extent agriculture. Methane, majority is animal agriculture. Particulate matter, also here combustion, clearly, but, and that's sometimes also an important difference, there is something of PM in the atmosphere that we cannot control, because there are chemical reactions, and figures sometimes show that despite the fact that there's less traffic, you would expect there's less particulate matter in the air. No way, there's even more particulate matter in the air, and this is one of the reasons why. Then we have our famous NO2. This is Dieselgate times 10. So NO2 is due to road transport, mainly, and especially diesel passenger cars. Up to 65% are responsible for the emission of NO2. And then we have also carbon monoxide. That unfortunately is something that we can hardly avoid unless we stop burning fires, but even volcanoes and other photochemical reactions, they contribute to the amount of CO, sorry. But the good news first, and the good news, of course, there are articles, especially in the European agency, the EEA, the European Environmental Agency, since 1990, emissions have decreased. And I guess that's what we all know, but there are areas where, and that's still the shipping, NO2 problem actually have increased, not decreased. Aviation is also an area where pollutants have actually increased, not decreased, mainly due to the amount and the frequency of this transportation. And then, of course, after good news, there's always the bad news, and I know you should always stop with the good news, not with the bad news. So here is the intermediate. As Stephen already said, and as also Ivan said, air pollution is actually a risk factor for the human health, and there are figures that we cannot deny either. And those studies come to the fact that about 400,000 people die due to air pollution in Europe, not worldwide. Now, 400,000 people, and whether this comes from 2017 or 18, the figures actually haven't changed too much. It's 10 times more compared to a typical number of road accidents. Now, if we zoom out into the world, then the figure is even higher. And between 2 and 7 million deaths, the figure is always debatable, and I don't think the exact figure counts. It's just the dimension of that figure with regards to air pollution, air quality is high. So what does that mean? Moving on from air pollution and greenhouse gases to something that we call air quality. Now, there's air quality sensors coming more and more in the world. And those air quality sensors are measuring a certain amount of gases or particulates that combine as such to the under the topic of air quality. What are these? First one is the particle that we discussed a few times, and there are different sizes of particles, and you will see it. You have a beach corn, a beach sand corn, you have a hair, and then we have the first particle matter with the size of 10, and that is kind of 5 times smaller than the size of a human hair. But then we go further down, that's called PM2.5, and that PM2.5 is again 4 times smaller than PM10. So now it's getting pretty small, and then on top of that, we have now PM1, the super fine matter, that is below 1 micrometer. Apart from the particles, we have the NO2 or the NOx problem, as we said, mainly due to diesel passenger cars. That is simply a molecule and looks like this. And then, of course, we have thresholds, and those thresholds we monitor. And those thresholds are supposed to help us to understand what's going on. And they are, according to the World Health Organization, also the European area, they have their own thresholds, and this is what you can see. And what do they do? Well, we measure an annual mean and we measure a 24-hour mean. And that's how we control transport. That's how we control city development. That's how we control our whole environment. Apart from those two, we have another 3. That's sulfur, SO2, the ozone, O3, and the carbon monoxide. So all these 5 elements count into what we call the air quality. And if you then look into some results, you will see that the particle matter concentration is actually around the limits, beneath the limits of the EU in 2017, but the nitrogen oxide values have usually succeeded the upper thresholds. How does an air quality measurement system looks like? You might have seen it in your town. Depending on the size of the town, you will find between 1 and 7. It's a container, it's a shipping container with, looks like some antennas. Actually, these are, a small inlets to suck in the air. Sometimes you have an active air in, and sometimes you have a passive one. In these containers, you find some very expensive machinery. These containers are usually about 500 to 700,000 euros. And they usually measure particle matter, NO2, CO, and some other stuff. There are more volatile gases. That depends very much on the city, on the container. It is not a standard recommendation what has to be measured. The measuring stations are slightly different. One thing is very important. When we measure air quality, we have the limit between 1.5 meters above and 4 meters below street level. And there are some creative solutions across Europe where I've seen one of these containers based on the floor, on the roof of a building, and the building was at least 20 meters high. Then, of course, you know, when you measure that, this will not be in line with the rest, and you can't compare apples with pears. How does air quality look like today when you go into the internet? This is how it's actually shown. So you will see a small flag or a tick with a color, and in the color you find a number. And these numbers are easily understandable. Maybe you remember that the unit I showed there was something like microgram per cubic meter. Forget all that. This is nothing that we can work in our daily lives. So this is how it looks like. And then if you compare, for instance, the timestamps, June 14, south of Australia, with January 5, middle of the bush brand season, you see definitely some of the measurement stations logged an extremely high value, actually a value above 500, which is the normal maximum, stating there's something going wrong. If we look into Europe for the same time scale, we see that nowadays, during COVID, slight post-COVID phase, it's nice and green is always good. If we look into the pre-COVID phase, it's not always that good. That, of course, depends a bit on the weather at that point of time, depends a bit on the wind, of course, but I tried at least to create the snapshots on the same time of the day to be able to compare it to some extent. That brings me to the last theoretical topic, because this is now the AQI, and this is what we are going to work more with. So we will combine those values of the gases into an index, and the index we call the air quality index. It is very simple to kind of understand the different levels and thresholds, and hopefully we'll never end up in this lower part. It translates all the values, it takes all the values, and of course there's also some more mathematics and calculations, but this is just to give you an overview for some further offline reading. So what do we now want to achieve? And that is maybe something that today is not really available. Personally, I believe that 2 measurement stations in a city, and I'm living in Aachen with 200-something thousand inhabitants, is not enough to tell me how good or how bad the air quality is. So instead of the current system that we show on the left-hand side, where we have one stationary sensor, we would rather use our possibilities today we see with the transport and logistics area and start some, we call it hyperlocal micro view, by somehow making sure that whatever we do in the future, when we travel on the road, that some of the data we collect while we are traveling can be used for some better goods. And let me here quickly introduce the Geotab's air quality project. So what we have tried to achieve is, can we realize a low-cost, mobile, near real-time measurement system that would allow us to exactly fulfill these needs and plot these nice graphs. So we started by, as we are working with Geotab, using our existing Geotab platform, and we connect this sensor, which is a sensor stack consisting of a particle matter sensor. And now we use a Bluetooth interface connected into the Geotab environment, and there we go. Because now we can visualize the air quality of driving vehicles more or less in real time. And we can do that by using simple add-ins that we have created and currently use it only in the Aachen region, but want to, of course, enhance this. And then we will be able to understand what can we do with this information. Can we use it for city planning? Can we use it for fleet management or fleet steering, etc.? And then, of course, as most of the Geotab people are working with, and I hope I didn't click, no. So we're working with big data. Then we use these tools, the big data tools, to really deep dive into the data and get better understandings of trends and issues that we might want to tackle. That's only possible with a certain amount of data. And to do that, we can do it right now. So with this, I will ask the question that we might want to discuss later on. Before I hand over, will less traffic or electrification really help us to reduce the greenhouse gas and or air pollutants? Think about that. Maybe it's a question you have asked yourself. Maybe you have the answer before. And let me close with this one. COVID, despite the fact that it's bad, it did have some positive impact on the current air pollution. So there are reports, there are actually tools which everybody of us can dive in and look into his or her city and see what has changed. And there are changes visible, which is, I think, at this point of time, a very positive message. With that, I would like to close my presentation and hand it over back to Ivan. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Harald. We take away the positive news, but certainly also the urgency that we need to do more, especially on the mobility and transport industry. So for that, let me introduce to our next speaker, Fabian Seithel. Fabian is a business development manager at Geotab. He has been here for more than 3 years, has a commercial background, is helping fleets to optimize their operations by leveraging data. And one of his main goals is to support fleets going and operating electric vehicles. Fabian, over to you.
Thanks, Ivan, and as well, thanks Nexus and Stephen for organizing the Global Fleet Virtual Conference. So really appreciating the efforts and looking forward to the discussion later as well. So EV now, why now? Or maybe let's say it different. Is it now the right time to go electric? And I ask an open question. So let me start with a bit of a capital market look at EV. And first want to make sure, so Tesla is not electric vehicles. Tesla is a company, and there's many uprising companies, LEVC, Byton, and many others, BYD, Lion, etc., that are investing in EV technology. And so obviously do the traditional automakers invest into EV technology. And not certainly the automotive industry has been suffering a lot, or is suffering from COVID-19. But looking at this, which now is 1 week old, Tesla now is worth a General Motors plus a Honda plus a Ford plus a Fiat Chrysler and a Daimler. So from a capital market perspective, and taking Tesla as an example, so EV, and it's not only EV but the ecosystem around seems really less impacted by COVID from a capital market standpoint, and is certainly of interest for not only the fleet and mobility industry, but as well from a capital market perspective. And taking the COVID-19 time, and whether now is the right time for going electric, operating electric. I'm based in Germany. I'm German, so taking Germany as an example. Germany has decided to put together a 130 billion euro coronavirus stimulus package, and there's been big debate in the news whether as compared to the financial crisis, there should be an incentive to buy automobiles. And there's a clear decision. There's only an incentive increase for electric vehicles, but no incentive for internal combustion vehicle and internal combustion vehicles. And so looking at Germany as the example, the financial incentive for electric car purchases is increasing from 3,000 euros to 6,000 euros until end of year 2021, and limited for new electric vehicles costing up to 40,000 euros. In addition, there's an additional 2.5 billion euros of a subsidy for the expansion of the charging network for electric vehicles, and another 2 billion euro bonus program for future investments by manufacturers and the supply industry in electric vehicles. And in addition to Germany's program, the Europe's draft Green Recovery Plan got leaked. So this is not yet official, but there was a leak that there might be a European-wide subsidy for electric vehicles and a clean automotive investment fund to accelerate investments into zero-emission drivetrains, amount 40 to 60 billion euro. So REVs taken benefit from COVID. I wouldn't necessarily say they do, but what we see is looking at from a country level perspective, that the EU, Germany, and we've been following other discussions in other geographies, tends to subsidize electric vehicles even stronger now as a result of COVID. Looking at electric vehicles, the charging infrastructure is critical, and not only the charging at the public charging infrastructure, but as well the as a fleet you care about options on how to implement charging at your depot, at your locations. So one thing I have on the slide is the number of normal and fast charging public charge points, again in Europe, which you see is growing a lot. But looking as well at the global fleet community and the professionalism of service providers in the charging ecosystem. So over the past years, the professionalism of service providers, the coverage, global coverage is increasing. So from a fleet perspective, once you're interested in going electric for the charging infrastructure side, both for public charging as well as for project-based work for your depots, there is availability, there's choice, and the service level is increasing, and there's many professional service providers offering products for fleets, which is good, because charging goes hand in hand with the operation of electric vehicles, and is something from a fleet perspective which should be, or which you want to work seamlessly. Okay, so is now the right time to go electric? And is the right time to go electric because of COVID? And Geotab's claim to fame is management by measurement. So Ivan has introduced the company where we always go for the analytical approach. And asking the question, is now the right time to go electric? We would always recommend, and we're working with fleets around the globe, that not because of COVID or not because of subsidies on EV purchase, but because it makes sense, it's the right time to go electric. And from a fleet perspective, what you consider about is, is there vehicles available on the market that could do the job for my particular purpose? So the job my fleet is performing, is there equivalent vehicles available that could do the job from a model selection? And B, what you look at is at the performance requirements. Do my driving patterns match with what an EV is capable to do? So the amount of driving I'm doing per day, is there does it match with electric vehicle capabilities? And the third perspective, total cost of ownership, or total cost of mobility. So the cost perspective, so is obviously critically important. So, and looking at subsidies, I mean, that only benefit the total cost of ownership calculation, but you want to know, would I need to pay more for going electric, or am I able to save money? And adding to Harald's discussion, and the environmental impact is obviously important, and CO2 footprint is important. And many companies we're working with have fortunately very ambitious targets on reducing their CO2 footprint. So from a Geotab perspective, what we offer and what we bring to the table, and what we use when working with fleets, is what we call the EV suitability assessment. And in brief, the EV suitability assessment is an analytical approach working with fleets on bringing objective decision making to go in electric. So what you would want to do is you would want to know, hey, does EV make sense in my fleet? And whenever EV makes sense in your fleet, then you should go electric. And makes sense, you want to know from an operational, but as well from a cost and ecological standpoint. So what the EV suitability assessment basically is, it's an accurate and convenient data-driven EV procurement recommendation tool for any fleet seeking to go electric. And the approach is you leverage the telematics data from current vehicles, may they be gas or diesel or hybrid, to identify which are best suited for EV replacement. So through telematics, you can analyze fleets over a certain period of time. We recommend a minimum of 3 months to then make a very objective decision which proportion of the fleet is suited for going electric and which proportion honestly is not suited for going electric. We conducted this with fleets across the globe like numerous times, and we never had the result that no vehicle in the fleet was suited for EV replacement. So every fleet globally has the potential to go electric. The question is which proportion of the fleet, which vehicles, and what's the TCO, what's the environmental impact. So how it works, you would select the fleet vehicles you want to assess, and typically you assess the vehicles that are meant to be replaced soon. And what the tool does, it matches the market data of the electric vehicles with the fleet's telematics historical data to pinpoint the vehicles in your fleet that are suitable for EV replacement, and would come to the result vehicle 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is suited for EV replacement, and vehicle 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 might not be suited for EV replacement based on the driving patterns of the last, for example, 3 months. And here, so it's important, and fleet decision making needs to be C-level suited. So here are two examples on results delivered by the EV suitability assessment. One perspective is the financial perspective, and we have example data. So the questions are, am I going to save money? How much money would I save? And how is the cost structure going to change? So electric vehicles, even though might be subsidized by the government, are more expensive on the procurement side, whereas they are cheaper to operate, and that cost structure will change, and the tool will give that will provide this drill down. And the second bit, and adding to Harald's presentation, and really fortunately, like many fleets globally are committed. Many fleets are committed to zero CO2 emission, or their green journey. But so yeah, you can show how much CO2 you would be saving in transitioning proportion of the fleet to electric vehicles. The second bit, and Ivan mentioned it, one perspective is the going electric. So slowly but steadily deciding which proportion of the fleet, or not slowly and steadily, but consciously deciding which proportion of the fleet has the potential to go electric. But once you electrified your fleet, the experience we have with customers, so electric vehicles, we shouldn't neglect that is a new domain for many fleet managers, in the sense that you're not hitting a gas station, but you need to make sure vehicles are charged in service fleets overnight. So it's a new domain where vehicle data helps to simplify operations. So Operate Electric, and from a telematics standpoint, we think we're among the only companies globally that can provide rich EV specific data for broad model selection of electric vehicles. We think is key, and our customers echo that in operating electric. So one thing would be, for if you're in dispatching, would be to know the real-time state of charge for your electric vehicles, to know, hey, if I'm gonna dispatch vehicle A to do the job X, does it have enough range, or would it need to charge on the way? As you today manage fuel consumption and fill-ups, you would want to know the EV consumption. And the third bit, an important bit, you would want to know when vehicles are charged, and most importantly, you want to know whenever vehicles are not charged. And the same applies for plug-in hybrids. If you do the additional investment into plug-in hybrids, you want to know that that investment pays off and vehicles are charged. So as a fleet manager, and that's the echo from our customer, it's important to know that the technology you apply works seamlessly and is in the hybrid vehicle cases is taken advantage of. Okay, so from a Geotab perspective, those are the perspectives we are offering. And so we wanted to have HelloFresh presenting, but Thomas unfortunately couldn't make it, so asked me to take over. And I talked about the capital market in the beginning of the, oh, sorry, I forgot the key takeaways, excuse me. So on the bottom line, when talking about going and operating electric vehicles are future-proof and reliable options for fleets. And that is being shown through the increase of vehicles on the market. So there's a broad model selection, and the professionalism and the availability of infrastructure is increasing. But data is key for going and operating electric. So asking the question, is it now time to go electric? Yeah, it's time to go electric whenever it makes sense for the fleet from an operational, financial, and environmental perspective. And when operating electric, telematics data are key as a new domain. So make your life easier when to run EV smoothly and operate efficiently. Okay, coming now to HelloFresh, one of our customers, and excuse me for the mess up here, but so HelloFresh, a great customer to work with. And I start the presentation looking at the capital market, and HelloFresh is doing great on the capital market. So a really great company to work with, a really sustainable business model, and bringing a sustainable business to customers. And yeah, it's as well from a customer perspective, it's a really nice product. And so HelloFresh is disrupting the traditional food supply chain, whereas the standard when you buy food in a grocery store, where it goes from from a producer to a warehouse to a wholesaler to a supermarket. In HelloFresh's case, the line is simple, and from the producer right to the consumer, which obviously has a benefit for HelloFresh, but is better for the customer. So it's faster, fresher, and all that food waste is limited. Okay, and looking at the HelloFresh logistics landscape and what technologies they use, and Geotab is one important part in that technology landscape. So as they're delivering food, temperature is critical. So they work with Valor on the temperature tracking as they want to control the temperature. They leverage Geotab technology in order to be aware of their fleet KPIs and in order to manage their vehicles efficiently. In addition, they use Zebra technology for their drivers and an application in order to leverage the state-of-the-art stack of technology in delivery and to maximize uptime and have digitalized processes in place here. And now looking at the electric vehicle bit of HelloFresh. HelloFresh being a sustainable company, so electric vehicles is a natural step for HelloFresh in order to run their fleet and match with their business. So what is important from a fleet management point of view for HelloFresh is have full visibility and range per vehicle, status of charging, energy consumption on the route, and as well the battery status of the cooling unit. So as they are in delivery, they need to know the vehicles can do the job and are able to deliver the goods to the customers on time, and don't need to charge on the way. And as well the full last mile visibility, as we're used to it from delivery, we want to know where are our goods. So our technology can help HelloFresh in order to provide that transparency to their end customers. And driver safety being a critical piece, as well for HelloFresh. So being one perspective here. And the last bit, and Ivan mentioned big data, the predictive analytics to lower downtime, optimize car maintenance processes. And so data for good is important. So close collaboration between partners by sharing data is key for HelloFresh as well. So that's that makes my presentation. So I would hand over to Stephen and Ivan, and thanks for paying attention. And looking forward to questions.
Thank you.
Thanks, Fabian. Thanks for sharing the link of the Green Recovery Plan. So we understand that it's not approved yet, but good to see that it's going in the right direction. And Stephen, we started with a disclaimer saying that we are passionate about this topic, and we could be talking forever on this. So now you see. I hope we have some time for some questions from the attendees, and over to you, Stephen.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you in the first place, Geotab, for being a partner in the Global Fleet Conference, and of course to Ivan, Harald, and Fabian for their presentation and bringing their insights. As Ivan has mentioned, we are opening the Q&A, so you as a participant can of course ask your question to our experts, and you can do that via the webinar tool. So you will have a function in there for questions. You can send your questions and I will moderate a little Q&A. We have a few minutes that we can ask questions. First question, I think it's a question for Fabian. Fabian, you talked about the assessment tool for electric vehicles. Is it for passenger cars and light commercial vehicles?
Yes, exactly. So those are the vehicle categories we represent as of today. So yes, that can be a quick answer.
Okay. Another question that popped in. It could be, of course, that in a crisis period, some fleet managers are a little bit, let's say, hesitating about should they adopt right now electric vehicles, as they need to focus on cost efficiency, and perhaps they also have even a question about how long will the battery technology last. I can imagine that Geotab, as an IoT analytics company, you have also some data that you could track from the vehicles that you have connected. Is there anything that you can share in terms of battery degradation, and should fleet managers be worried?
Yeah, so I can take this one. So yeah, we've been doing a very big study on battery degradation, and you're absolutely right. So for us, big data is absolutely key, and we're able to look into this. And so yeah, battery degradation is so we don't see it as or the study has been shown that yeah, it's a future-proof technology, but we can share more, or we're sharing more insights to the broader public and the fleet. But overall, it shouldn't be something as of today, and obviously technologies is steadily improving, and that should be of a concern. And over the period of 5 to 6 years, it's absolutely in the range.
Okay, questions are coming in. A question for Harald. Harald, how can a company that is now in the audience, for example, enroll the Geotab air quality project?
That is a good question. Thanks very much, Stephen, for that. So this project started as a kind of science activity. We are working in a collaboration with the university, and we are now at a step where we think that the platform that we offer from Geotab point of view is going to be good enough to be open to the public. So this is an open system. The data is open, be available, the interfaces are there, and what we cannot offer is giving a product which is reliable in front of any federal organization, etc., because these low-cost mobile air quality stations do not allow governments, city councils, whatsoever, to take formal decisions. So they are an enhancement, and we would like to promote this enhancement to fleets. If people would like to get in touch with us, either by pulling the data or working with the Geotab system to create some data on their own, we offer the opportunity to give them a 3-month pilot support with 1 or 2 devices, and they can simply contact us. Due to COVID and the summer vacation, our supply chain is at this point of time exhausted, so we will only be able to start this by the end of this year.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Harald. Question regarding the importance of EV infrastructure that has come in. You talked about it, Fabian. The question is, how important is it in, let's say, the cost perspective of an EV and the assessment that you make to have power in the right place at the right time? Is it expensive? Is it a long process, let's say, if the infrastructure is not there? Do you have any information regarding, let's say, the impact of having, yes or no, the right infrastructure in place?
Yeah, it depends. So we've been working, or our fleets have been working with infrastructure partners in order to realize projects at their facilities. So one thing that is critical is from a cost perspective, this is not or should not be factored on a 3-year or 5-year plan as you would calculate the vehicles, but this is a long-term investment into the strategy of an organization or the strategy of a location, and that needs to be taken into consideration. And the cost perspective heavily depends on the complexity, AC versus DC charging, and the facility itself, how it's set up, etc. So underground can be more complex than if you have space and etc. But so one key takeaway here is there's great service partners out there that have realized projects all over the globe that our customers have been leveraging, that we can recommend, that go at the location, make a check the setup, and can give a clear direction there. But yeah, so good options out there in the market.
Okay. Another question: are EV manufacturers looking at embedding your technology so that perhaps, let's say, in a standardized way already, when you purchase or when you lease a certain vehicle, it comes already with the Geotab technology on EVs and so on? You do it, for example, it's put in the question for other services that you have, for example, with General Motors or with another car manufacturer, sort of a collaboration. Is it also the idea that Geotab is going to see what car manufacturers are going to implement your technology on EV directly into their cars?
Yeah, that's a very good question, Stephen, and we can speak openly that we're having these conversations, and so it's talking about battery degradation that you have put up. So from an automotive manufacturer perspective, it's important to exactly understand these technological data developments over time to improve the product, and as well as manufacturers understand it's critical for their customers to operate vehicles and leverage data. Those are exactly conversations we're following that. Yeah, so good question.
Another question: do you feel that the industry is moving and will move quickly enough in the next, let's say, 3 to 5 years to offer adequate options in terms of electric vehicles? Or do you see that the industry taking a little longer to get where they are supposed to be, if we also look at the challenges in terms of air pollution?
Was that a question to me or to Fabian?
Well, I'm just reading the question that it's popping up on my screen. I don't know if there is anyone that can answer or if we can come back in another session.
I can look into the crystal ball myself, of course, and I would say they are lagging behind, but that's not surprisingly. Nevertheless, the rules and the frames and the laws actually that were created for 2020, 2030, and 2050, they haven't changed yet. So as long as they are in place, I would say, at least for the European OEMs, there is the necessary motivation in place to make sure that the fleets get moved on and enhanced. That's my view. Okay. Also, a final question for you, Harald. You mentioned it in your presentation. I will ask it to you. Will less traffic and/or electrification help to reduce greenhouse gas and air pollutants? Yeah, and this is a tricky question, which I would also be able to answer with a yes and a clear no at the same time. I think we will definitely see improvements when it comes to NO2 due to electrification. There's no question about that. We will not see the potentially hoped for improvements on the PM side because wire tear, tire wear, of course not wire tear, tire wear will continue, maybe less brake wear, but we will have PMs. And as you might have seen on the greenhouse gas, CO2, where it comes from, and other areas. So we will continue to see erosion. We will continue to see bushfires and large fires. All of them contribute. And that means from a transport point of view, we are lucky because we do have a clear way of improving this. From a outside point of view, I think we are still very much dependent on how the whole global population is going to look into this and will work with this challenge.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Harald, for answering the questions. Also to Ivan and to Fabian, and of course to our sponsor Geotab for this great deep dive webinar that we have had. You can see that we will have a recorded version, so if you would like to relive the webinar and the information given, you can do it via the event app of the Global Fleet Conference. And then if you have more questions for the experts, you can contact them also via our event app, because you can discuss and share your questions with them. I invite you also for the upcoming sessions in the Global Fleet Conference program, so don't miss our next sessions. Now, you see that we will also have a workshop with Geotab in the upcoming week, so it will be great that you stay focused also on our program, and then I hope that you have a safe and global fleet journey. Thank you very much, and see you next time. Bye-bye.